Hello Orchid friends, welcome back to my channel. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day, staying healthy and staying safe. Today we have my Tolumnia red sun. This is one of my quote-unquote old faithful orchids in my collection, and the reason that is because it is such a reliable bloomer every single year, and I just cannot believe how reliable and how vigorous Tolumnia orchids can be when they're in spike and in flower. This time around, this orchid also is giving me its primary spike and of course the first clump of flowers, and then later in this video you're going to see that it also gave me two secondary spikes after I accidentally cut off its first secondary spike. So this orchid definitely did not disappoint, so stick around until the end to see what happened. If you have been following my orchid channel for a while, for at least say 1 to 2 years, you should have already seen some other videos I have done on this particular Tolumnia orchid, red sun. But when Tolumnia orchids are not in flower, the way that they look, they always reminds me of, succulent plants. They just like succulents because their leaves are so plump, really water retentive, and I always just kind of put them on my side table, sometimes dining table as quote-unquote succulents as decorations. And they're super easy to care for too. They're not really that fussy, but the only thing I would caution you is because their roots are super thin, so if you want to, like me, give your orchids really distinctive wet-dry cycle, I still recommend that the amount of dry days you give to Tolumnia orchids should be no more than 2 days, unless your humidity is, more than 65%, sometimes 70%, then I would say, yeah, maybe you can get away with letting this orchid stay bone dry for 3 days. But I won't go more than that, because my biggest fear is that, letting this orchid stay dry for too many days, that those thin roots simply just get desiccated. Other than that, Tolumnia orchids are super easy to take care of. For example, this orchid would get quarter strength fertilizer from me every single week, and then at the end of each month, the last watering cycle of the month, I would use just pure water to soak this orchid really well and drain it really, really well. Currently, my Tolumnia orchids, including this one, are all in a small 8-ounce plastic cup. And these cups are nothing special. These are just regular beverage cups, except that they're 8-ounce cups, very small. And I do use a double cup method. If you see in the video there, it's a 2 8-ounce cup double cup together, but the inner cup has drainage holes at the bottom. So when I double cup them, and if I purposely leave a little bit more water at the very bottom, which, because there's a drainage hole, the water would go through the drainage hole into the inner cup. So that gives me a way to convert from traditional methods into semi-hydroponic method. And I go between these two methods, depending on what I see in my environment, whether the weather is hotter, drier, etc. Every time they flower, I would say the cycle is about 2 weeks. Usually around 2 weeks time, you'll start to see the first few flowers starting to fade. Now, coming up, you're going to see something really horrendous. I was not paying that much attention when I was cutting its spike, and I accidentally cut off its secondary spike. But thankfully, after a few days, this orchid started to put out, showing signs of putting out additional secondary spikes from the nodes below. So I was pretty happy, because I was thinking, well, there goes my sequential blooms or secondary blooms. I guess this orchid is done for the year, but it was not true. it started to go down to the second, the following two nodes to put out secondary spikes. So I was really happy that this orchid continued to reward me versus punish me for not paying attention and cut off its original or first secondary spike. The only downside of this orchid is that it doesn't have any fragrance. It's just plain Jane. Even though the color is striking, I love this red color. And sometimes, depending on the temperature, the edge around the skirt, you'll see some white dots. The blooms on secondary spikes, you can kind of see some white dots around it. But the main flower spike, I couldn't see any white dots. It was just completely pure red. And also another thing about Tolumnia orchids is they are cheaper. Usually you can get one anywhere between $12 to $15, sometimes maybe $18, but it's a lot cheaper than getting a completely mature plant. Say, for Phalaenopsis orchid, especially if you're trying to get any kind of species or primary hybrid. In terms of Phalaenopsis, their price point is anywhere between, 25 to 50, sometimes even more. But Tolumnia orchids are a lot cheaper, so for those of you who are interested in this kind of orchid, don't be afraid. They're not that fussy. And when they're not in flower, they look just like succulent plants. They're great for decorations. The only thing is really their roots are thin, so make sure you don't let them be too dry for too long. Other than that, it's super easy to take care of them. I really don't have any other complaints about them at all. So there you go. And if you're really interested in getting more Tolumnia orchids, I would recommend you do more research, because there's just so many different kinds of varieties out there, and because they are all grown from seeds and they become mature really relatively quickly compared to Phalaenopsis orchid, that's why their price point is lower. But because they grow from seeds, so the variations that you can get from seeds, grown orchids, it is endless. There's so many different varieties, so take your time and pick the ones you really like, because there's just so many different kinds out there. So I hope you get some in your local areas and give them a try. I think you'll like them really much. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!